The helmet.
Yeah.
I love the chair.
You like it?
Hey, so welcome, everybody. My name is Mayor Mike Wickers. Today is Tuesday, October 4th, 2022, and this is the Cottonwood Heights City Council work session. So the first item on our agenda today is item 2, which is a review of our business meeting agenda. We'll go through that quickly. We have a full list of items to get through. So Mattervin, our IT manager, will lead us in a pledge tonight. We then have a cool opportunity to recognize as one of our citizens, and that'll be done by, I'll actually have Riley. Why don't you, our Assistant Chief Riley Pilgrim and Chief Burchett will be here as well.
Yeah.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about what we're going to do?
Yeah, so this will be recognition for a resident who helped on a house fire we had back in July. When the crew got there, a couple of the crew went to the back and started attacking the fire, and the captain was trying to get in the home by himself, and a resident who kind of had a familiarity with the situation offered to help and provide assistance to the captain to get inside the door so he could go find the resident. And at a pretty big risk to himself, was willing to help us out, and it made a huge difference. His quick action, willingness to step into a pretty dangerous situation definitely was a difference between something going well or not.
Yeah.
So we're very appreciative that he did that and that we're able to recognize him tonight. So
I love this stuff because, you know, it's so easy for people to back off and not get involved and just, oh, there's a fire, I'm not gonna, and yet this person, like you said, you know, put risk to himself to get involved to help people.
yeah.
And so this is 100% deserved, and thank you
Yeah,
for
of
doing
course.
this. So we appreciate it. The next item on our agenda tonight will be a citizen comment period. And then we will move to a special report from our United Fire Authority Chief, Don Burchett. So Riley, is this going to be more of just an introduction? Is it an actual presentation? You know,
Mostly an introduction
plan?
on himself, just so the council can, you get an experience to meet him once a month. So this will be a chance for the council to get familiar with Chief Burchett, and you can kind of share what he's kind of accomplished up to this point, and then kind of his vision and his priorities over the course of his time as chief. So,
okay.
So he'll probably just share a few things about himself, and it'd be a good chance to, if it's appropriate, to kind of Q&A back and forth if there's any questions the council has for him. So,
Okay. So yeah, I'd encourage the council, if you do, to think of a couple questions. Great. Thank you, Riley. Then we have 2 quarterly staff reports. One will be a police report from our police lieutenant, Dan Bartlett, and then a public works report by our public works director, Matt Shipp. We only have one action item tonight, which will be consideration of resolution 2022-52, approving entry into a grant agreement with the Utah Department of Cultural and Community Engagement. And this is basically a grant that gets allocated to our arts council. So it's actually a really important thing that we do. Anything you want to add to it?
No, we just $4,500. Our match is already part of our budget with compensation. Paula put together the memo on that, and we're recommending approval.
So is there anything specific that our match has to be allocated for, or anything within the arts council?
In the Arts Council purview, and our staff time and costs are part of the match towards this.
Okay,
So
great. Okay. And then we'll approve our consent calendar. So we are honored and grateful to have the project manager from UDOT for the Little Cottonwood Canyon redevelopment project, Josh Van Jura, with us today. Josh has been busy the last little while, as you can imagine. I actually listened to what I imagine is going to be the same presentation yesterday in a Central Wasatch Committee meeting.
Well, hopefully I can do a little bit better and have one more try at it. I'm obviously failing at Zoom right now. This is what's happening right
Okay.
here is I don't remember a password.
So do you need some time?
I believe I have the presentation. I could pull it up.
I did send it to you and we can absolutely do that. Let's give it 2 seconds. Maybe this will work. Just in the nick
There we
of
go.
time.
There we go. Well, Josh, thank you for coming. So like I mentioned, this has been I imagine an exciting, stressful time in Josh's life, the last couple of years, especially the last month or so. And for good and bad, your name has been had. And to Josh's credit, he is not hidden. He's been about in the public and so we're grateful that he's been willing and recognized the importance that this project plays to Cottonwood Heights and that he's here today to tell us some more. So what we're going to do, I'm going to ask the council that we don't ask any questions. Let's let him get through his presentation. And then I'm actually going to go by one to our council to ask questions. So we'll kind of go that way in that route. So whenever you're ready, Josh, we are happy to hear from you.
Perfect. Okay, we got that. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for having me. Like you said, I have not hidden. I look at these as an opportunity. There's so much information in this document, right? There's 1,700 pages of really, really not very interesting reading, unless you're a nerd like me. It's incredibly technical and dry on its best day. So I understand there's probably not many people in the world that have read the entire document. So again, this is a great opportunity for me to do a quick overview, you to ask pointed questions, and hopefully for me to know the answer and help clear up some of these misconceptions. I've certainly seen plenty of them on everything from Instagram to Reddit to just everywhere. So thank you. Also, thank you for all the support from Cottonwood Heights, Mayor, yourself, your staff. We meet with Tim and Mike pretty much weekly on a topic, right? Whether it be the mobility hub or comments or so. Thank you for all the time from your staff. Project purpose and need. This is really what the project is trying to solve. You've heard me say this before. I don't like to read slides, but our goal is to substantially improve the roadway safety, reliability, and mobility on SR 210 from Fort Union up through the town of Alva. So that includes Wasatch Boulevard up to the High T, North Little Cottonwood Road, and the Canyon proper, right? So I think it's important to note that they're really looking at 2050 conditions here, right? We know that there's issues both in the canyon and on Wasatch today, but with population growth, that's really expected to continue and really worsen. So in 2050, we expect it to take roughly 80 to 85 minutes from the 7-Eleven at the mouth of Big up through Alta. Now I'm guessing right now I could do that in 21 minutes, right? That's kind of the Google average time. So we are looking at about a 400% increase in travel time on these busy weekends. But it's not just weekends, right? It's holiday periods, and sometimes just those random Wednesday powder days. As I think everybody's aware, certainly this community, if anybody gets the resulting queuing, it's got to be Cottonwood Heights, right? We certainly see it on Fort Union entering Big Cottonwood. Here, 94 South frequently backs up about a mile for traffic that's heading eastbound. For traffic that's coming from the north, under avalanche closures today, we can see backups up to Bangle or 3,500 South. That 50 days a year, we do expect stop and go traffic all the way to 3,500 South Light. 50 days a year. So that's pretty significant queuing for
50?
50. Yes.
Okay.
Sorry.
I want to make sure I'm
Yeah, great. So that's pretty significant queuing, and it makes it difficult for all those residents that live off of those side streets to simply get out of their neighborhoods. I think you're familiar with the 5 alternatives that were proposed and analyzed in the draft. I think it's important to note that these were all measured off of a no action alternative, right? So if traffic continued to grow, population growth, but there were no mitigating activities. So that's really what we compared it against. On the draft, we got over 14,000 comments. I personally read every single one of them. We responded to every single one of those. Those are all included in the draft. Overall, there was close to 80,000 different comment codes that were used. I mean, obviously some of them were used repeatedly, but about 80,000 comments that warranted response over 14,000 submittals. And the two that I really want to point out were, one, support for tolling. I was pleasantly surprised by the support for tolling in the canyon. And then the second one was support for phased implementation. Some of the revisions, I just want to go over this quickly so people know what changed from the draft to final. The 2 bus alternatives, there will now be a bus stop located at entry 1 near the Creekside Lodge. It's basically right where the existing UTA stop is. It's really just a shed now. This would be an enclosed building with locker space, you know, a place to put your boots on, get warm, store your lunch, and honestly wait for a bus down at the end of the day. The Alta Lodge would be between the Rustler and Alta Lodge, or the Alta bus stop would be between the Alta Lodge and the Rustler. That's commonly referred to as the mine dump. You know, it's a little area in the parking lot that bows out there. So that should be able to provide for patrons that are also not going to the resort, right? Some of the revisions to Gondola B and the cog rail. One of the comments we saw repeatedly through that 14,000 was, well, if I'm going to the Gondola B or the cog rail and you have me getting on a bus at the gravel pit, like, why would I get off at the Gondola base station? That just doesn't, like, just stay on the bus. Obviously, the more transfers a transit rider has to use, the less appealing it is. So in response to that, I know there's been some concern from Cottonwood Heights. I'm sure we'll talk about this in the question part coming up, but that was changed from 15 to 2,500 stalls at the Gondola base station. We did do traffic modeling on this with the addition of a one-way access road off of it's about 9,500 South Wasatch Boulevard. This is the city section of Wasatch. If you know where the county salt shed is, we designed a one-way access road. So traffic from the west and south can enter the structure from at a lower level utilizing that one-way access road, and traffic coming from 215 would enter off of North Little Cottonwood Road from the top. And traffic modeling shows that the queuing associated from the merge at the mouth of the canyon will not impede that ingress. I think that's an important part that there's been a lot of concern about. As you're aware, UDOT did choose Gondola V from Lakai as the preferred alternative. The main reasons for this were it functions in a different alignment, right? And because of that, it's not prone to slowdowns associated with adverse weather, slide offs, crashes, or just honestly a nervous driver. So it does have a much higher reliability time. But I think it's important to note that we recognize as UDOT that we don't have the funding for the gondola today. We also recognize there's problems in the canyon today. There were last season and there have been for seasons before that. So in an effort to start mitigating these existing problems, we proposed a phased solution that again will help mitigate today's problem while still helping with the long-term problems. I'll talk about that more in a minute. Quick gondola overview. This does have a total travel time of 55 minutes. That includes driving your car from the 7-Eleven up to the base station with 6 minutes, 12 minutes for parking. That does include waiting for the next gondola cabin. We modeled all the pedestrian ingress and all that fun stuff with Monte Carlo analysis. 27 minutes in the gondola up to Snowbird, and then another 10 up to Alta, for a total trip time of 54 minutes. Little point that I just want to make, the bus service today is 46 minutes from the gravel pit to Alta, right? If you go look at UTA's, I will unfortunately say historic 953 service, still available online. You can see that it's a 45-minute trip today, and that does not include the parking component. So travel times here are on par with both the bus we've proposed and the current bus timeframes. With this alternative, 35-person gondola cabin, very similar to a bus. A bus is 42 people. And under this, a cabin would arrive every 2 minutes. Capital cost is $550 million. So that is a little bit lower than it was in the draft by $40 million. And that savings is a result of going from 1,500 to 2,500. And the O&M is now $4 million when it was $7.6 million in the draft. So again, that reduction in annual operating and maintenance costs is a function of that lesser bus service from the mobility hubs to the base station. We analyzed just over 20 different environmental resources: air quality, water quality, noise impacts, environmental justice, economics. The two I really wanted to highlight quickly were air quality. So with the reduction of 30% of the vehicles, it's estimated that we'll save about 4,000 tons of greenhouse gases per year, which is a huge amount. I just looked at the monitor when I was walking in, and I don't know how long that system has been up and functioning, but that has saved 92 tons. So we're looking at saving 4,000 tons a year. So big savings for air quality. It is true that the gondola does have slightly higher emissions than the bus service does. And also the electric bus numbers are in there as well. So if there's questions about that. And water quality was also analyzed with regards to both Clean Water and Safe Drinking Water Acts. And none of the contaminant levels of any of the options approach threshold values. Some of the main considerations, we talked about that highest travel time reliability. We absolutely recognize that 22 cabins are going to be a visual change to the canyon. There's no doubt. I absolutely agree with you. One of the other things, we did look at a life cycle cost. The gondola is right in the middle of the 5 alternatives cost-wise. It's literally number 3, which means it's third from the best. It's also third from the worst. At $550 million, but when you add in that 30-year operation and maintenance costs over the life cycle, it actually has the lowest overall life cycle cost. We did do some additional visual simulations as part of the final EIS. These can be found in the document, chapter 17 and 32. Specifically, we wanted to look at some of the climbing community's concerns. So that's why these two happen to be from POVs of climbers. Again, I think we did about a half dozen additional ones. So phasing. Like I said, we don't have the $550 million today to implement the full gondola package. Interestingly, 335 million of that is the gondola. The remaining is the other components such as snow sheds, trailheads, Wasatch improvements, parking structures that are common to all 5 alternatives. So I think that's just an important distinction, that there's 159 million in commonalities there. And like I said, we recognize there's a problem today, and honestly, it could take us years to secure federal, state, or private funding to build this long-term solution. But recognizing that we have those problems today, that's why we're proposing this phased solution, starting with improved and increased bus service. If we're going to improve the bus service, we need to have some place for these people to park, but also somewhere where Valley buses can drop people off for this ski service. And we'd implement tolling, right? Because tolling is really going to be a great motivator to get people to switch from their private vehicles to transit. But you can't implement tolling without the buses. You can't implement, or without transit, but in this case, buses. And the buses need somewhere for people to park and for Valley buses to drop off of. So those 3 are really a package. And that's why we're proposing those as the first step. How am I doing on time? I gotta hurry it up probably. Okay. So some of the alternatives, tolling, like I said, I'll hit this one first. I was surprised by the support through the comments of this. I say tolling, but this can also be occupancy restrictions. There are some problems with occupancy restrictions, both technology wise and how it could be implemented specifically for residents of the town of Alta. So I'm going to say tolling, recognize that there may be some improvements that allow occupancy restrictions. Right now, we don't think they're possible, but that may change. And I think there might be a chance it'll change. So there's my caveat there. We are anticipating tolls in the range of $25 to $30 to get that 30% reduction. It's a pretty substantial amount, but this would only be during those peak periods. So really 7:30 to 10:30 in the morning, 50 days a year, right? And those are 50 winter days. So we're talking Saturdays, Sundays, and holidays. Base station parking structure. I hit on this a little bit before. This is another visual representation. Oh, you can't see my mouse. You can see a gondola tower here kind of in the background. This is projected to be 1 floor above grade level on North Little Cottonwood Road with rooftop parking. It's probably, oh, you can actually see it pretty well, that there would be some parking lights for safety. And then an additional right turn lane to enter bike lanes. What this doesn't show is a multi-use trail on this side of the road that is anticipated.
Where does that appear in the EIS?
Chapter 17.
Chapter 17, thank you.
Wasatch Boulevard, I wanted to spend a little bit extra time on this one because I figured this was a topic of great concern here, more than potentially some of the other presentations I've done. So you'll see that the preferred alternative was the 5-lane alternative. I do want to say that we've committed to a phased implementation of this as well. That we will start with the imbalanced lane alternative, which is 2 lanes southbound and 1 lane northbound. With a median. Now that median may be in some sections a 2-way left turn lane. It may be a left turn bay if it's a signalized intersection. And in areas where neither are needed, we've committed to working with the city to, you know, do a vegetated raised median likely, or, you know, keeping in the spirit of the Wasatch Boulevard master plan.
So before you go to the next slide, I just want to ask a question.
Do you want me to keep going, Mayor, or do you want to hold to the end? It's your call, sir.
Well, only because I don't know how many more slides you have, but I would only point out that this illustration shows us that the pine groves that are all the mature pine trees that are here in this area near Dane Board will all be removed in favor of a wall. And this also doesn't show the sound walls. But I just think that we need to be aware that this does illustrate that with the width necessary, the pine trees will be removed.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. Yeah,
Thank you.
just keep going.
Good for it.
Yep.
So again, starting with that imbalance lane, this allows us to preserve the right of way if and when that fifth lane or second northbound lane, really, because the center isn't really a lane. When the second northbound lane, if and when is needed. But in the meantime, it really provides a much better experience for the trail users. The multi-use offset trail users, because it provides a little more horizontal offset from the vehicular traffic.
There's also no sidewalk along the west side of the road, so individuals that need to move will be walking along a bike path in order to walk on the west side to get to an intersection.
Avalanche mitigation. I'll go through this pretty quickly. Anybody who's a skier knows that Little Cottonwood is one of the most dangerous roads in North America, unmitigated. On average, it has a closure of 56 hours per year. And that's over about 11 days. So average closure is 4 to 5 days. Last year, we had a pretty calm year. The 2 prior years, we had individual closures in excess of 60 hours, right? It was unfortunate that we had a snowbird ski patroller that had some part problems during one of those. I compliment the emergency services that got him to where he needed to be. But this is a real hazard. You know, we've heard the Alta's running out of food story, right? I mean, these long duration closures have an impact for the canyon. Here's a picture looking uphill. The 3 locations that are proposed are White Pine Sheets, and Little Pine. They're actually 2 separate avalanche sheds. Here's a picture from the inside of what it may look like. Total of about 3,200 feet of shed. But these 3 paths average 163, 105 millimeter howitzer rounds per year. These are the most frequent repeaters. It is pretty cool to shoot a cannon. I'm not gonna lie, I've done it. I still work on. I worked on UDOT's avalanche forecasting team and had the opportunity to work as the big cottonwood gunner. And it's also terrifying when you consider it has 1,000-meter shrapnel pattern. Like, it's literally designed to kill people a kilometer away. So there's some safety hazards with doing this, especially when you're going over public buildings. Trailhead parkings. So we are proposing to improve 4 trailhead parking lots. These are the Gate Buttress, Lisa Falls. White Pine is going to nearly triple in its total capacity, and a new one called the Bridge. As part of this, we would eliminate roadside parking within a 1/4 mile of these locations. They'll include water quality buffers, you know, parking in stalls. If you're familiar with the new grip mill looks like, imagine more like that. Really reduces erosion and improves water quality. That being said, it also reduces a couple of stalls. Not much, 528 total to 511. Eliminating parking in the upper canyon. This is really roadside parking parallel to the white line between Snow 1 and Entry 4, and then around the Wildcat area. Public comment period. We have 13 days left. October 17th is the end of the public comment period. As of this morning, we've received 5,353 comments. I have not read them all. Please don't ask me to say what the prevalent theme is in this. You heard me say that yesterday, Mayor. I don't think that's fair. Is 1, they haven't all been submitted, and 2, I haven't even read all the ones that have been submitted. So we will compile some themes once the comment period is over. But please, as citizens, as a city, take some time to formulate your thoughts. What we may have missed, what's wrong with our analysis, what can be done better. I do want to emphasize that this is not a vote, right? This isn't a ballot referendum. This is an opportunity to improve the process and come up with the best alternative that we can. Moving forward, this is my last slide. The comment period will end on the 17th, after which we will read, review, consider all those comments. We will make any changes that are required as part of those comments, any additional evaluation, engineering, whatever we need to do. And we anticipate releasing a record of decision, which is the final step in the EIS process, really around the end of ski season.
Okay, no questions. Thanks, Josh. So, no, I'm just saying.
No, the questions are the best part of this.
So let me say thank you again for coming and for doing this and for being willing to talk with us. So what we'll do is we'll start with Councilmember Peterson. And we'll just go around the table and if we can do it that way. And we've allotted 20 minutes. I'm willing to go another 5 or 10 if we need to, but so let's start, Doug, and fire away, Doug.
Okay, Josh, I know that we all want to have this work out. You know what I mean? We know that Cottonwood Heights will probably be affected more than any other city because of the proximity to us. I guess the one thing that we want to try to mitigate is making an island of everyone living east of Wasatch. I know up in the, obviously much farther north, not in our city, you've got the issue with, Olympus Cove in that area there. It's almost like a separate city. We want to obviously mitigate any of that problem. And I'm hoping that, we're both on the same page on that, or all of us. Getting people from across Wasatch right now, even now it's an issue safely. Are there planned semaphores along right now in your drawings? Are there planned semaphores to help us do that?
You mean traffic signals?
Yes.
Okay. People use that term.
Sorry. Yeah. I've heard it
in different than proper terms a lot.
Right.
So it just clarify. No, you just making sure I was answering the question. So the only additional planned traffic signal at this point would be one at the Gondola base station exit. That being said, there are 2 either overpass or underpasses that are proposed as part of this. So that will add. And then we do want to make sure that the crossing distances, there are protected pedestrian zones, and figure out ways to work with the community to make sure there is safe passage for residents.
So from 7-Eleven to, just to clarify, from 7-Eleven to the mouth, there might propose 3 different ingress egress from the east to the west.
Well, there would be the at-grade signals, right? So that would be 35th I'm going at, maybe I should have known.
Right.
35th
east.
35th Bengal, are the two prominent ones, right?
Right.
And then 2 additional under or overpasses.
Okay, so there would be over or one of each or 2.
We would need to work with the city.
Gotcha.
Honestly, both of them have their pros and cons.
Gotcha.
Right, people worry about seeing an overpass, and underpasses people worry about safety and icing and snow removal.
Great. So I haven't seen that in this, but that is.
It's really hard to summarize 17 pages in 18 minutes.
Gotcha. Now,
So you're right, that is not in there, but the 2 are anticipated right near Ferguson Park.
right.
And then Russell Park Road are the 2 locations that were preliminary identified in conjunction with the Wasatch Boulevard Master.
We'd love to be able to get the the Ferguson Park across there, there's a possible Dover. I don't know if you know anything about the Dover Hill possible park.
Is that
Probably
where
not.
the
It's a
old
big
church
church.
is?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I actually used to live on Avondale,
Oh, uh-huh.
and so, yeah, I'm
Okay, so
Yeah,
you're familiar
I-
with it. And I know
use
that's
that
jumping ahead a little
backyard a
bit,
lot,
but
yeah.
yeah, fantastic. The other thing is, I know there's been talked about a bicycle lanes and different
Mm-hmm.
things like that. Is in the photo that was mentioned by Council Burrell, is that not, is that just, it looked like to me that there was a painted line and then the other one kind of showed a different level. Is that,
So, I can bring it up, but I can probably just describe
yeah,
it as
maybe
well.
just describe it. If you will. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll stop. Just take too long. So it is anticipated to be, essentially a buffered bike lane. Now that is.
Explain buffered, yeah.
Yeah,
just-
so, basically there would be an existing shoulder. That would also potentially be utilized by buses in the bus alternative for queue jumping. But it would be very similar to the bike lanes that, and this is a terrible example, but I'm going to use it anyways. That's in front of the gravel pit, right? Where there's basically 5 feet of no man's land, essentially between the vehicular 4-inch white line and the 6-foot wide bike path.
So no barrier at all, just.
There is not a barrier. It makes it really difficult for plowing.
Right.
So there's some operational concerns with any form of barrier there. I'm not saying it can't happen. I'm just saying at this point, there's operational concerns with putting positive protection in that lane.
Your shared use path was off grade, though. It was a
Correct.
different grade level. That
Yeah, so that
potentially also a
is-
bike path
Yeah,
for
so,
someone who wasn't. Maybe more casual biker.
right, and I think that's an important distinction, right? There's cyclists who are confident and there are cyclists who are not confident, right? Some people just don't like to mix with traffic, right?
Well, I don't think any of us like to mix with.
That's a fair statement. So, but there's certainly, you have your very confident Strava crowd,
Right.
right? And then you have either newer cyclists or families.
Casual.
Right, so really, there is that option of a separated multi-use facility as well.
That's right. The other question, Josh, thank you for that. Is there are there any plans to have any kind of foliage in between to give us any feeling of? I was talking to Mayor before, when I was on the bullet train many years ago, I couldn't feel the impact of speed until I had something alongside of me.
Mhm.
And I could see the telephone poles going like this. Is there a possibility, and I think I know the answer to this, to put some kind of foliage, something to give you a feeling of speed, to mitigate the speed?
And so that is the plan, is to have a vegetative park strip. And we would obviously work with the city on what's desired there. Again, there's pros and cons of everything between native grasses and
Maintenance is an
aspen
issue.
trees, right?
Right.
And historically, that is the responsibility of the city.
Okay,
But to your question, yes, there would be something there to give that perception, but also to retain the boulevard feel.
yeah, and that's what we've talked about for years, is it is a boulevard rather than a freeway,
Yes,
And so we want to maintain that as much as we can.
you don't want Bangor.
No,
I completely understand.
or Provo Canyon.
Or even 7th East
Yes,
or
yes,
even
yes,
south,
yes.
right? That's understood.
Okay, with time constraints. I
Thank you,
think I'm
Doug.
okay.
Appreciate it. John, Councilmember Newell. Where you go,
I want to go back to the cost of the gondola itself, and then also the any other alternatives. Has there been a discussion as to where the funding would come from as you move forward with this project?
So there really hasn't. Funding is outside of the EIS process, right? We're doing the environmental impact study. And we don't want to be swayed by funding constraints. I mean, our job is to present what the total costs are. Not to say, well, if you make a bus fare $7, that comes off there, or, you know, we could look for public-private partnerships over here, or tax reinvestment zones. Thankfully, that is all outside of the EIS process. But in all reality, it could be federal, state, and or private funded. And I know that's incredibly vague and you're probably hoping for something more than that.
That's what I expected.
But
Yeah, my concern would be that the taxpayers would be required to foot the bill when they would not get any benefit above and beyond anybody else that would be using this system.
And
that's
that
a
is a fair concern, right? I think there are a lot of projects that UDOT does statewide that are state funded that are expensive. Now, I'm not saying they're $550 million. But I haven't been to Kanab since they reconstructed Main Street, right? And that's not justifying anything, right? But that is understood.
Right. Number two, during the avalanche mitigation, what is the time constriction that occurs during the steep period?
Are you saying for bus operations or gondola operations?
For gondola operation. Or both, as a matter of fact, because it's gonna change that scheduling that you have here that seems fairly reasonable.
So I'll speak to I'll just say vehicular traffic, which would include private vehicles and or buses. It could be the same. So when we close the road for avalanches, right? It's an interlodge condition. Everybody's inside except essential personnel. They call out the shots. Shots are fired. Then UDOT staff, typically our plow drivers or avalanche forecasters, go look for results, specifically if anything hit the road, and to make sure we had detonations, right? Look at those powder burns. That obviously takes a minute for people to drive up and just through the canyon before they open the gate. We would still need to do that for the road, of course. If there is debris that hits the road, we have to bring iron in, right? Graders, cats, dozers, clear the road. That being said, results don't hit the road every time, right? Of course. I mentioned the 1,000-meter shrapnel pattern. There are sections of the gondola alignment that are within that 1,000-meter radius. The cabins would need to be removed during firing in those sections, both the uphill and downhill. Conveniently, these sections are kind of perfectly located between the Snowbird stop and the Tanner's Flat Angle station, which will have the capacity to remove cabins. And then they'll be stored there temporarily and then rehung. The track ropes will be inspected by pan tilt zoom cameras. And the rope line the main haul line is continually monitored through non-destructive testing. So it's estimated that that can all be done in 3 minutes from the ending of firing, because it's all done at full rope speeds. And so basically, if there's no results that hit the road, the gondola and the roadway will probably open about the same time, right? In events where something does reach the road, after the roadway is inspected, the gondola could begin to load.
So I'm sorry, I'm not really, you're saying it takes 3 minutes to put the gondola cars back on and get them in position and run the drone over the wires?
No drone.
I mean, I thought your question was, is it a long, what period of time would the gondola have to wait versus buses wait?
That's what it was.
Right, which is comparable, it's about the same.
Mhm.
Okay.
That's it.
You're it for you. Thank you, John. Councilmember Bracken.
Okay, a couple questions. You probably have answers. The 80,000 comment codes. I'm assuming somewhere you made a report of how they all fell out.
We didn't actually. But that is one of the most common questions I get.
Okay, well, you got it again. If you- maybe-
No, it's-
Somebody bring that up and send it out. It'd be really interesting to see how that.
Right, and so, the main reason we very specifically did not do that is because, again, this isn't a vote, right? We were looking for ways to improve it. I read every one. If you are going to read that, I would warn you that you need to read a lot of them to get a good stance of what's going on. Because the comments very much came in batches based on when different groups did their media outreach, right? So Salt Lake Climbers Alliance does an event, we get a whole bunch of posts from climbers. Snowbird sends it out to their pass holders, we get a whole bunch from Snowbird. Black Diamond sends it out to their email list, we get, right? So you can't just read like 100 of any given block to get a fair representation.
No, I understand that. So, I mean, the real. A real nuts and bolts question and concern is how it affects traffic in Cottonwood Heights. Have you done an analysis of what that difference is with the gondola or the bus service? And how that improves flow along? I'm assuming improves, because if it degrades flow on Wasatch Boulevard, we're really not that interested.
No, I understand that. So I do want to point out something, just out of the gate is the improvements to Wasatch are based around commuter traffic projections. Wasatch actually sees higher traffic loads on a standard commuter Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. than it does on a Saturday morning, as long as the canyon isn't closed for avalanche traffic.
With avalanche being the.
Yeah, so that is the differentiator, right? But if it's just a Tuesday at 5 p.m. versus a Saturday morning at 8 a.m., Wasatch actually sees about 300 more cars per hour in the PM peak, 1,100 versus 800. It's absolutely 1,100 vehicles
Per hour, that's what really the counts up
is
there.
in 2019. It was 1,100 vehicles in the PM.
That's a single lane packed, is kind of what that is. If I remember some of my.
So that's a little bit different though, because when we say 1,100 was the capacity, what we're really talking about is a 2-lane mountainous road. A straighter road, even with an equivalent speed with no grade, has a slightly higher capacity. I don't want to get too nerdy on traffic engineering. So I'm stopping myself. But no, you're absolutely right. Having the mobility hub at 94th and Highland and the gravel pit does take cars off of Wasatch. But again, right, because
Takes them off going that way, but it doesn't seem to do much for them going south. Unless they're out getting on a bus somewhere else.
the gravel pit, right? So if people were getting on the gravel pit versus loading the
That short
gondola.
bus and then a gondola ride.
No, so we're driving their private vehicles to the gondola base station versus taking a bus from the gravel pit up to Alpha. That's the question you're asking, right?
Well, just on Wasatch.
Okay,
Yeah, I guess the issue I see with having 2,500 stalls down there, it's great if it gets them all off the road and people keep moving, but at the same time, it doesn't. If the goal is to reduce traffic by 30%, I don't see how that accomplishes that goal by having them. It may up the canyon,
right.
but it doesn't do anything in Cottonwood Heights per se, where we have the people going through town. I guess that's the point I
And
like.
so the unmitigated traffic, and I think we're kind of bringing two issues together. Mayor, you asked me about some level of service things yesterday, and I wrote those down to answer. And so I do have levels of service for both the Wasatch segments and intersections. In both baseline conditions, 2050, and under the gondola and bus halt.
Well, I am nerdy, I guess, if you send that.
I can just tell you what they are if you let me.
You send it, because we are time constrained.
Yeah,
know
I would
Ellen
send
has
it. Let's
questions.
let's keep going.
This point has been made, and I would make it as well. Throughout the state of Utah, there are highways that get people all over the place, which is what 201 I said the right two staff. Does. A lot of those cases, when they get to a new town or a main street or another area that has a higher density population, they reduce the speed limits to 35, usually 35. Sometimes it could be 40, but 35 miles an hour. I know legacy wise, Wasatch has always been at 50, but I think there's some really good consideration to see if something in the design, in this planning of doing that, we could have that same consideration. Whether it's a little bit more curves or whatever it is, because it's kind of a similar, it's kind of a similar type thing. It's not a, I mean, go to Moab, go to Penguin, you go to any of the other highways in the state, a lot of them assess ones that have ingress and egress. That's a point. And then finally, a concern that I do, the biggest, one of the larger concerns I had with the gondolas is it really seems to only serve 2 spots up the canyon, as
So
opposed to most of the others.
I hear that a lot. And let me just say my opinion of the situation. You may disagree with me, right? Clearly the largest user group in winter are resort bound skiers. If you just look at the sheer number of parking spaces, right? So by trying to build a system that attracts the highest user group, we have the best odds of getting that 30% reduction. And if we get that 30% reduction, as we think we can with all 5 of these alternatives, that should mitigate the queuing for the residents, but it should also make stable traffic flow for the backcountry skiers, hikers, people who just want to go for a drive. Whereas if we targeted all the backcountry skiers, we would never even come close to 30%. So by optimizing the system and making it attractive to the largest user group, it should benefit everybody. But I understand the 2 stops and
30%, your entire corridor, do you segment or differentiate between, because here it's easy to differentiate up the canyon and
Yeah.
not up the canyon.
no, that's a great, so we're saying 30% reduction in the canyon proper. Wasatch in the, the Cottonwood Heights versus the unincorporated section is evaluated through levels of service.
Okay.
And that is the information that's in table 1.4-2.
Thank you.
And I can also text that to you, Mayor, because
That'd be great.
No, that helps a lot. Thank you. You can go ahead.
Okay, let's go to.
Yeah, we do want to find a solution that works for what needs to happen widely, but also works for our neighborhoods.
Councilmember Burrell.
Thank you. So in deeper and further analysis of the EIS, there is data within the FAIR and Peers 2018 study and 2019 report that is severely flawed. The data, this data is what the Wasatch Boulevard expansion through Cottonwood Heights is based on. And that data does not support an expansion to either the imbalanced or the 5-lane. And I have that data, and it's too much to bring out at this meeting in our short time, but it makes it clear between that and the data for the new ski village, which will surround the gondola base as described in the 2020 comments by Chris McCandless and his CW management company, that there will be 1,400 daily trips through Cottonwood Heights associated with that new 75-room hotel, restaurant, and 50 new houses. And with that, it will require an expansion of Wasatch Boulevard. Between these 2 important factual points, it leads me to believe that UDOT has provided data to the public for their 2019 foregone conclusion to build a gondola. And so my question would be, specifically to you is the widening of Wasatch Boulevard for the new ski village.
No. Can you provide that data,
Yes,
please?
I have that data. And it's already been presented to you, I believe. I think we're waiting for your response to the Fair and Peers 2018 study and report. So I would also say that it's important that there is a decoupling of the $159 million to improve the situation, and it should be decoupled from the building of the gondola. Now, that may be up to the legislature to decide, but clearly the foregone conclusion that we must have a gondola with a pre-assumed ridership that is unprecedented in the world. There's no precedence that anyone would ever ride this gondola because of the long travel time and being suspended over a canyon for as much as 37 minutes. To ride a 7-minute gondola or tramway ride at Snowbird is one thing, but there's no precedence to say that anybody would ever ride this more than once, especially if they've had to connect there by a bus. And I understand that's why we now have a 2,500 parking stall garage. So I just wanted to go on record with that. I won't
Great.
take any more time.
Great. Josh, I've got some questions.
Sure.
So I'm gonna
Fire away,
not
sir.
let you go yet. We've got a couple more minutes planned. So first off, thank you again. I consider we've been meeting monthly. You've answered hard questions. I've got some more hard questions, and I want you to not take them personal. Okay.
Totally understand.
So I would ask, when you talk about, and I mentioned this in the CWC meeting yesterday, the 22 minutes that it takes without traffic congestion to go from 7-Eleven to Alta, to say that there's a 400% increase isn't right, because you're comparing a level A day to a level E day that happens 20 days a year.
50, but I agree. Yeah.
So you're comparing a level A to a level E. So I would ask you to in reality, if we're comparing a peak period day from 7-Eleven that takes 40 to 45 minutes, it's a 200% increase. So if I could ask you to communicate that in the future, I'd really appreciate that, because it's not apples to apples in saying that it's a 400% increase. It's not, it's 200. So let's see. So you mentioned that the EIS does not include funding, but there's a funding component. We all know that you've come out and said, hey, it's $550 million. That is based off of a 2019 estimate.
I'm gonna look to phone a friend, Terry. That was based off 2019 numbers, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
So
Normalized across all of them.
Okay.
I could ask everybody in this room if they're paying the same amount as they're paying in 2019. The answer would be not even close. I think it would be really, really fair and transparent to not get to an ROD before we ask you to give us a real number. And that's just going back to where you got the original estimate and saying, can you give us an update? Because that number, honestly, Josh, might be closer to $1 billion. And it could be closer to $750 million, but it's not $550 million. And I think everybody, we're not living in 2019 as much as some of us wish we were still.
And we did assume an inflationary rate based on funding year moving forward. But you're right, it's not the inflation rates of 7% that we've been seeing for the last year and a half, 2 years. That's a true statement.
Yeah. Okay. And then the last one is really just a disagreement. And I want to emphasize again, I respect what you guys do, what you're asked to do from Carlos down. Carlos and I had a great hour-long meeting yesterday. He listened to me, was empathetic. I mean, I just can't tell you enough. I appreciate that. I want to disagree on one last aspect, which is the 2,500 parking stall at the base station is the most effective to our residents. If the gondola gets funded and chosen, I would really ask that we reconsider. And the reason that I'm asking you, your comments earlier have been, hey, look, people are not gonna get on a shuttle to then get on a gondola. And in most cases, I'd agree, the tolling might have to be worse. So we're talking about 20 to 50 days, whatever we consider peak period, that might need to be, and $20 is a lunch. $100 might make somebody go from you know what, that shuttle that's gonna take me 3 minutes to get from the big Cottonwood Canyon to the gondola base station. I could go 3 minutes to not spend $100. There are ways to get people on a shuttle to a gondola versus in my mind, not doing anything to eliminate traffic on Russell Boulevard. So anyway.
And I don't disagree with that statement, right? If it's a less attractive solution, a higher toll might alleviate some of those fears,
Yeah, so.
right? And so everybody has their varying
Yeah,
levels of okay with tolling. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, a larger parking structure that we have talked about and actually got funded around Big Cottonwood Canyon makes a lot more sense. It's a lot closer to the freeways. It's then, is cars or is a bus the best way to get them, catapult, whatever, get them from there to the base station, assuming that there's a gondola. Is there a better way that makes it attractive rather than just having them keep going right off, get off the freeway and keep on going? And I know this isn't supposed to be an overpowering thing, but it changes the economic development impact as well for what happens at the mouth of Big Cottonwood Canyon, which is already kind of understood that it'll probably be a fairly good sized village with resources for skiers and visitors and a place to go and do, and it moves that from a place that is a little more isolated from residential to putting it a smaller one right in the middle that could compete.
Well,
So
that's why there's gonna be a ski village that Chris McCandless has planned, and
Oh,
he'll
a
get the
bigger ski
revenue,
village.
he'll get the revenue there. That's where the revenues are gonna go, the 2,500 cars are parked there.
that's okay. No, I appreciate that. That's just, you can see it's a passion. Hey, Josh, thank you. So again, pass along our appreciation to Carlos
Of course.
and your team. Thanks for coming, and thank you for being here, transparent, and being in front of kind of the firing squad, I guess. So
No problem. This is good for us. Hopefully it was informational for y'all, and now people can write better, more well-informed comments and hopefully get to better potential solutions.
I always have to have my comments added in.
And we will be providing our comment from the city
Yeah.
by October 17th. I just want to make sure everyone's aware of that. We've had a conversation last week or 2 weeks ago, and
I
that
wasn't
is
worried.
coming. So
and we are going to warn you, we're going to let Ellen write it. So.
They call me council member. Barone.
Councilmember, I'm sorry. Okay, thank you, Josh, again. Yeah. So we have a really cool meeting today. I don't know if we've had this much diversity in what we do. So we are really excited. Most of us on the council know, and city staff know Randy Whitehead. Randy Whitehead is a resident from District 3, has really spearheaded multiple neighborhood groups gathering and forming to learn about zoning, redevelopment opportunities with the city, and specific interest with Hillside Plaza. So we have invited Randy and his group to come and spend about 20 minutes. If you want to come up, Randy, to the hot seat, and we'll let you present to us.
Thank you.
So
Which one is the hot seat?
The one with lava.
Hopefully, this will not be near as hot as the last one. Okay, let's see here. If I can make this work. There we go. First of all, I want to thank you for the opportunity to come and share these ideas about Hillside Plaza. It's a privilege. I'm grateful for the city being willing to listen. I do want to give this little preference beforehand. As our group, as you mentioned, Mayor has gotten together and we've had several meetings here in the community room at City Hall. We've studied lots of things. I've gone out and taken pictures of many of the parks and areas that the city has developed. And I have to say, my perception of the city has changed. I am in awe of how much the city has actually done. I'm in awe of many of the beautiful parks that have been constructed. I'm in awe actually of this facility right here and those incredible views of this beautiful city. It inspires me. And I know in some ways, I've probably been critical of the city. But I want you to know that this process has changed my perception. And that I am actually incredibly grateful for the many things that the city has done. I'm grateful for the planning that has been done and many of the results of it. And I feel that our perceptions have been aligned more with the city and what has been stated in the city plans than we anticipated to begin with. And I kind of surprised by that, but I had to say that. So
Great. Thanks, Randy.
I apologize for taking so much time to actually say that. Okay, so why are we here today? It's really to share some perspective from the city residents about the development, the Hillside Plaza, and what could potentially be there. And so I really want to just go right to the end results. These are the high level results, and then we'll go into some of the detail of how we got to them. But as it turns out, the city residents, in every way that we looked at it, had some major preferences as to what they would like to see at Hillside Plaza. And most of those are they'd like to see local shops and restaurants, not chains, but local shops and restaurants. That was number one of what everybody would like to see. Everyone's concerned about green spaces and walking paths. They'd like to see a small grocery store, a boutique grocery store. And then they also would like to see some sort of way to have performing arts, whether it's indoor in a performing arts center like a theater or even an outdoor. That was very important to them. Multi-use spaces for arts and recreation. Those just resonated over and over, and those were the 5 primary preferences. And at first we were thinking about, okay, what one item might be able to go there? And with further research, really, it could be a combination of many of those, or even all of them, depending on the size and scope and how it's laid out. But I'd like to also share with you the 3 different sources of insight that we looked at to gather some of these ideas. The first one was, Mayor, your comments and the article that you wrote in the newsletter just last month. And then we coupled that with the city plan and then also the Cottonwood Heights master plan. And I'd like to go through those very quickly and share what those were. We also reviewed secondarily the survey from Y2 Analytics, the most recently completed survey, which in reality didn't change much from the prior survey that they had. And then the insights directly from the residents group, which I represent. Okay, so first I'd like to go through very quickly and say, what is Hillside Plaza? What does it look like? What's its current place? There it is. That's looking east from 2300. You can see it's not very busy. These pictures were just taken a couple days ago. That's where Rite Aid and Reams used to be. That's where Dollar Tree is today and where Planet Fitness used to be. There's the very east side. There's the east side parking lot. And then the back side. That's how it joins up to the existing residences. That's looking west. And that's the back looking east. Okay. After you look at that, I must say I am very grateful to Mayor Wicker's call to have residents share ideas of what could possibly go there. Because what could possibly go there really can help beautify and help make a wonderful statement for what the city is and what it stands for. So again, Mayor, you mentioned that you wanted to see a city center. You wanted it to be the face of the city, and that's an ideal place for that to occur. Something that would make us feel proud as residents to live in the city and have that be a part of the city, to enhance our sense of community. Want it to be a public purpose more so than just a commercial purpose. And you said you realize that a public purpose may not really come to pass if it's just left up to commercial interests to make it happen. You also mentioned that you'd like to see perhaps a gathering area, for restaurants, for shops, performing arts theater, artistic spaces, even food trucks. So now let's look for a moment at what the city or what the Y2 Analytics survey reveals about the residents, not just the group. That our group is probably more centered around the neighborhood surrounding Hillside Plaza, but in reality, out of the 185 residents, there are residents from all over the city. But still, you have to realize our perception is more as immediate neighbors. So you ask, what do the residents, the city as a whole, really want out of the city? So here are just some highlights. And again, these are the actual slides that were reviewed, what, a month and a half ago. So these are fresh results. The city residents said that they love being in a community, the community feel. They didn't want to be a part of a sugar house or the city. They like the bedroom community where there's a sense of belonging. They like the beautiful views of the mountains, and we are very fortunate to have those, and I love those every day. The close proximity to the canyons, access to recreation, hiking the canyons and so forth. They like that it's a good, safe place to live, a good place to raise a family. And I think that's what draws everyone here to Cottonwood Heights, what sets it apart. The next question was, what are the top concerns that the residents have regarding Cottonwood Heights? This first slide is the immediate concerns. It's really the concerns of today. And as you read some of the comments that the survey people mentioned, they were concerned about high density housing. They were concerned about growth. They were concerned about traffic. And that's really what they were concerned about, and how some of that type of growth could really impact the existing residents and the rest of the city. Okay, so those are the issues for today. What are the issues 3 to 5 years, so more long term? What do the residents feel about those? By darn, they're the exact same issues. They're concerned about growth. They're developed, concerned of multi-unit housing, which is high-density housing, water conservation issues that are all related to growth. So the city residents are saying, yeah, we understand that growth can be good, but we're a bedroom community and we kind of like to maintain the character of it. Besides that, there's not a lot of room for growth. But anyway, those are their feelings that they openly shared. Here's some specific support for those concepts. In this slide, residents were asked, if you had $100 or if you could allocate $100, where would you like the city to focus the allocation of those funds? Isn't it interesting? The very top two requests were for city parks and open spaces. Just in case we weren't really sure that's really what they wanted, they also wanted trail improvement. It's recreation, it's fitness, it's green space. That's how the city residents see themselves and see the city and would prefer to see the focus going forward. They also mentioned that they prefer single family residences rather than high density. Also, this is probably the one that interested me the most, or surprised me the most, is probably the better answer. 71% of the residents, get that, almost three-fourths of the residents said, and even though that wasn't a real question per se, they wanted the city to preserve the skyline and the views of the mountains. Now that 71% isn't kind of a summation of those that somewhat wanted. That's skewed all the way off the side. 71% said that is important to them because that's how they perceive Cottonwood Heights and the value of living here. They also strongly supported improved pedestrian safety. Now, I'd like to just mention a moment, a little bit about our little resident group. As you know, this is a group of residents that got together because one of the developers said that they were going to put in those high density and that we'd have to fight city council. We didn't like it. I mean, that's what prompted this. This was not an activist group. Not that I'm saying anything wrong with activist group, but that was not what brought us together at all. The group analyzed and has gone through, formed committees, met multiple times to review the city plan, the Fort Union Main Street Corridor Master Plan. We brought in experts to teach us Utah land use law. We've reviewed the Cottonwood Heights zoning. We've met with Mike and his team several times, several people to get knowledgeable. We've studied Cottonwood Heights city governance. We've attended untold number of city council meetings, obviously not as many as you. And we've had regular meetings here at City Hall. So the group is not a hostile group. The group, quite honestly, is made up of 185 normal citizens that love the city and are willing to roll up their sleeves, get their hands dirty, and make a difference. And this is a little more detail in what the resident group came up with. So what we did is we did a brainstorming session. We had everyone in attendance raise their hand and shout out ideas. And then we numbered them, and then we gave all the residents 3 options and said, okay, if you could pick 3 of them, what would they be? Since there were so many options to begin with, they are now formed into groups so that it made more sense. And this is the result of the group. The highest requests were local shops and restaurants. And they wanted green gathering spaces with walking paths. They'd like a boutique grocery store. If you look at the next two and you combine those two together, has to do with performance and gathering spaces. Whether it's performing arts center, or whether it's an outdoor performance space or some other space to gather and get together. That is over 20% chose that as their highest options. And then you can see some of the other options that were chosen. Now, one of the biggest problems everyone has in saying what is a gathering space, what is a city center, is envisioning what it really means. So here are some photographs and images of places around here in the state that others have done that can give some ideas of what might be viable or workable. Everyone wants beauty. If we go back to one of those, the Y2 surveys, one of the concepts was residents of the city love beauty, obviously the mountains. So a beautiful design is very important. Walkable paths and transitions to the neighborhood. This one is really kind of interesting. That's from Cottonwood Heights. That's over buffering the rear yards of the neighborhoods and all of those office buildings kind of over there by where Market Street Grill is, okay? Corporate Center. This is a beautiful change and a beautiful buffer that transitions from the residents' backyards. If you look over on the right-hand side behind that blue spruce, you can see the top of a parking lot. The other part of it is down below. You almost can't even see it. Now, what I'd like to do is compare that and let you envision what the current Hillside Plaza spot looks like. Can you imagine the difference that would make? You talk about parks, or you talk about people that want to hike and be connected to nature and how important that is. That would become a destination for many people within the city just to walk through. It's not a new idea, it's something that has already been done, but it's a total transformation. Multi-purpose areas that could be used for get-togethers, whatever it may be. It could be used for after school, teaching kids crafts, or senior center, or whatever. Multi-purpose areas. Small performing arts theater. And this happens to be the one at Taylorsville, which is relatively new. And inside that facility, they have a huge multi-purpose room. This is apart from the theater. And when I went in there, they were doing, if any of you have kids that have taken musical lessons, they have federation where occasionally the kids go, they perform, and they have the coaches and the judges judging how well they did. That was one thing that was going on in that center. I mean, it was really cool. Just a sample of an outdoor amphitheater or picnic areas where you can go and sit down and have a lunch and spend time. Food trucks. This happens to be a picture from Holiday, boutique grocery store, whatever that may be, farmers markets. In conclusion, I'm grateful to the city for even considering this type of use at Hillside Plaza. It fits the original city plan for a city center, a gathering place, something that would make us proud, it would be the face of the city, who we really are. I think we as a city have a one-time opportunity, because there isn't much more land left in this city, to create a lasting legacy that would make a difference, that we would all be proud of. And I really believe that that city center concept could be the anchor, if you will, for all the rest of the development up and down the Fort Union corridor and set the tone. And so, conclusion, I thank you. We have a cool opportunity, and I'm grateful for your willingness to consider these ideas. Any questions? I'll open up if you have any questions.
You know, Randy, I just want to say thank you. I mean, literally, your presentation warmed my heart, and I don't want to get sentimental, but that's what I imagined when I wrote the article, and the fact that you have gone to this effort and the groups that you've met with and the time, you know, as I've tried to tell people, we care about what happens there. And what you've done is, I can't thank you enough. I mean, that's exactly what we needed to hear as a council. And our residents needed to hear, and I hope as many people as possible can get to look at your presentation, because it's nail on the head. So thank you. Thank you. Okay. Well, so that's going to be a tough act to follow. Fortunately, we have some of my favorite people here. So number 5 on our agenda is we have the Executive Director of Administration for the Central Wasatch Commission, Blake Perez, the Executive Director of Policy, Lindsay Nielsen, and I don't think we have Board Chair Chris Robinson here, right?
It's online.
He's online. Okay, so Chris has joined us via Zoom, but I'm thrilled to have you all here. So as you know, I'm heavily involved in the Central Wasatch Commission as a board member, and now you get fortunately as the council and as our community to hear from a couple of the executive directors that run this organization. So Blake and Lindsay, thank you for being here, and we're excited to hear a little bit about what you want to tell us.
Good to see you all, having us back. It's been a while. Chair Robinson, are you there? Are you in?
Yes, I'm here. I had to change my venue a little bit, but thanks to Cottonwood Heights and to your council and mayor for letting us come.
Thanks for being here, Chris.
Well, thank you for having us. Chris is going to run through the first couple of slides, and then we'll just go between Blake and me, and then we'll answer any questions. Go ahead, Chris.
Thank you. Well, I think that I know Mayor Wickers knows this, but we have a pretty special mission, I think, at the Central Wasatch Commission, where we're an interlocal government agency that's made up of elected officials from the jurisdiction surrounding the Central Wasatch. We have 3 ex officio members in addition, but we now have the Forest Service, UTA, and Metro Water of Salt Lake and Sandy as ex officio members. But to go back to the previous slide, the function that we play is, you know, we're a forum for ideas. We convene, we provide conflict resolution, and it's a unique in my 14 years as nearly of being a member of the Summit County Council. It's been a high honor for me to be involved with this organization that allows both the Wasatch Back and the Wasatch Front to collaborate on this Wasatch Mountain that is very key to our water, recreation, our economy, our environment. And so that's what the commission does. We had a great representative from Cottonwood Heights in the persons, Mike Peterson and Kelvin Collimore before that. And we're very grateful that Mayor Wickers has allowed himself to serve as one of our commissioners. And let's go to the next slide. You can see that we have those jurisdictions, Sandy, Park City, Salt Lake City, Brighton, Alta, Mill Creek, of course, Cottonwood Heights, and Summit County. And then we have a stakeholder council. You want to please go to the next slide? Well, here's the member benefits. We operate on a consensus basis, and that is somewhat unusual. We have on occasion members of our commission that are suggesting that we have minority and majority reports, but in essence, we're trying to operate most of the time, and so far we actually haven't had any minority reports. We try to find common ground. There's lots of controversy in life, as you all know, these days, but we're trying to work together. And you can see on this slide, approaching land use and watershed protection, transportation approaches, improvements, short-term projects. We have a visitor use study that we've commissioned. We've completed an online tool, the environmental dashboard. And we have this group of 35 stakeholders that involve, you can see them from the ski resorts to conservation groups to recreational interests, cultural and educational, private citizens, transit, community councils, and the like, homeowners associations. So we have a very active group that's very diverse on the stakeholder council, you know, from Sandbar Canyons to Snowbird, you know, might be polar extremes, and not to single out two, but those two S's are easy to contrast. So with that introduction, and maybe I've gone beyond what I was supposed to do, Lindsay and Blake, but I'll turn the time back over to you.
Thanks, Chris.
Part of our work is a mountain transportation system that Chris mentioned earlier. A few years ago, we started on a very high level, broad look at a mountain transportation system. This is a regional transportation system that connects to the current transit system, gets people in and out of the mountains, connections to the Wasatch back. We spent a lot of time on that, and we developed a set of pillars, these value statements around what the CWC would like in a mountain transportation system. We've continued on that work. We're working in collaboration with Salt Lake County on a Mill Creek Flat project right now, improving the roadway up at the top of Mill Creek. We do have an eye on working and trying to implement a shuttle program up Mill Creek Canyon. We've got several steps before us to do that. One really exciting piece of work that we just signed the contract yesterday, and Mayor Wickers is part of the transportation committee, is the Big Cottonwood Canyon Mobility Action Plan. What we would like to do in the next 8 months with our consultant is lay out a plan that we would like to do for Big Cottonwood Canyon, hitting on some of those values, those same values that we developed in the value or in the pillar statement. So connections from the canyon up to the mountain, looking at those mobility hubs adjacent and in Big Cottonwood Canyon, and trying to reduce vehicles going up the canyons and making it safer and year-round access. We had a great presentation earlier from Josh Ventura. We had Josh yesterday at our board meeting. CWC is engaged in that process. We will be making comments. I'll be working closely, like I've done in the past, with staff on Cottonwood Heights comments and incorporating what we can in CWC's comments as well. I've been tracking where your comments are going, where your city is from, and we've got those in our outline right now. So, and then in addition to those three canyon works, the work going on in those three canyons, we over the past few years, we've done some short-term improvements, trying to actually implement things that we can today. A few years ago, CWC provided some funding to UTA to clean up some routes, provide more frequency, and then we saw a bump in ridership. And this past year, still working with Cottonwood Heights and Sandy City PD, where we've done a bus bypass service where the police department provides a bus escort to the mouth of the canyon. It was the first year that we implemented that, and we've got some really good results. We reduced travel time by 39%, which equaled about 50 minutes. We've reduced travel time on those particular days that we were able to implement this service. So we're working.
May I just ask a clarifying question? Did you work strictly with the Sandy Police Department, with UFP? Which police departments did you work with?
All of them.
All of them?
Yeah, Cottonwood Heights is at the table. We're
Okay.
the tricky part with Wasatch Boulevard to try and do something like that. It's very inconsistent. Where we have the opportunity on 9400 South to do that type of service. So we looked at Wasatch Boulevard. It was just
Couldn't escort.
it's inconsistent roadway, but we're still working with police department, UDOT, to find ways that we can, particularly at the mouth of the canyon, improve mobility for all vehicles. So that's ongoing. So that's our mountain transportation system work. This next piece is our visitor use study. We're really excited about this. This really bubbled up from our stakeholder council group a few years ago. A lot of discussion around what's the capacity of these mountains? How many people can these mountains hold? Well, we're embarking on this visitor use study to find these thresholds of acceptable change that will help us inform development and recreation and access moving forward. This is a really big study. We're incredibly proud about it. And we anticipate this visitor use study being done this year. So in December of this year, we should have some results from that visitor use study. I'm going to pass it over to Lindsay.
I'm so excited I get to talk to you about the environmental dashboard. The environmental dashboard, if you don't know, it's an online tool. It's a website that is part of the Central Wasatch Commission website. And what it has done is it has amassed all of the existing data about 5 environmental elements specific to the Central Wasatch Mountains into one place. So any information that exists about the water quality, the air quality, the vegetation communities, wildlife, and flora and fauna in these mountains, we have gathered it, and we have worked with the team at the University of Utah to make that data accessible and fun to use. The audience, the phrase lovingly coined by our developers at the University of Utah is K to gray. So school-age children all the way up to technical users and people who like to recreate in these mountains can hopefully use the environmental dashboard and find some value in it. And I mentioned this has been a project that has been many years in the making. We first had this idea under the Mountain Accord in 2015. So it's been 7 years in the making, and we are so proud that it is up and running. I'd love to maybe at another time come back and walk council and the public through the environmental dashboard. It's just so fun, but we'll move on for now. If you have questions, I'm happy to bring back into it. In addition to the environmental dashboard, the Central Wasatch Commission hosts a small grants program where every year, this 2022 was the 3rd iteration of the short-term projects grant program. And the projects that you see illustrated on the slide are the ones that received either full or partial funding from the Central Wasatch Commission Board. These projects, the criteria for funding is the project in question needs to fulfill one of the core tenets set out by the Mountain Accord. So does the project fulfill environmental protection? Is it a recreation stewardship project? Is it a transportation and transit project? Does it steward the economy of the Central Wasatch Mountains? And the board found that each of these very these wonderful projects did fulfill those. And so you can see we fully funded a couple of different shuttle programs. So Wasatch Backcountry Alliance is running a shuttle program up Little Cottonwood Canyon to service backcountry users at Grizzly Gulch. What we're really proud of is the construction of beaver dam analogs at Willow Heights Pond in Big Cottonwood Canyon. And what beaver dam analogs are they are man-made constructed beaver dams. And what that is trying to encourage is the reintroduction of beavers back into that ecosystem at Willow Heights Pond. We have trail maintenance projects here, the Bonneville Shoreline Trail Reroute project. We are supporting the Tri-Canyon Trail Deferred Maintenance Program that CCF Cottonwood Canyons Foundation runs. This has been a wildly successful program. The public, as well as our commissioners and our stakeholders, are excited to see this program continue. And when this opens up to the public every year is March of every year. So if you, as a private citizen or as part of an organization in the community that you work with, have an idea, be on the lookout for that, March 2023. Last but not least, this is the landmark project of the Central Wasatch Commission. This is, of course, the Central Wasatch National Conservation and Recreation Area Act. It is a federal lands protection bill. It originated in 2015. Jason Chaffetz, then Congressperson Jason Chaffetz, ran or sponsored the bill. It did not make it out of committee, and since then this bill has gone through 4 different iterations. Hundreds of public comments have been collected and implemented into the various iterations of the bill. This project of the CWC has been on the side burner as we have been working, as my colleague Blake mentioned, on our various transportation projects in these mountains. However, the CWC is heading into its annual board retreat in November of this year, and this bill, the CWNCRA, will be one of the main issues of discussion where the board will decide next steps that they want to take with the bill. Okay. That concludes our presentation. That is the CWC in a nutshell. If there are any questions, I think Chris is still on the line. Blake and I and Chris would be happy to entertain any questions.
Council, any comments, questions?
I have a couple questions.
Sure.
I'd be interested to hear more about the capacity study. Is this the U.S. Forest Service capacity study that they were willing to do a year earlier than they had originally planned?
So there's a little bit of nuance. It's not a capacity study. It's a visitor use study.
Yeah.
We are working in conjunction with the Forest Service as they do their visitor monitoring study. So it worked out really nicely. Every 5 years, the Forest Service does their visitor monitoring study, and that's forest wide. Our visitor use study gets down into the granular data that we're really looking for from the Tri-Canyon areas. So we'll get an idea of those thresholds of acceptable change with the intersections on impacts to the recreation, the outdoor recreation before that experience deteriorates, before water quality deteriorates, and ecological impacts start to deteriorate. We'd really like to incorporate the findings from the visitor use study, particularly the 6th element, onto the environmental dashboard, which is the social human impact to the mountain. So it's not a visitor capacity study, it's a visitor use study, but we should be able to tease out some of the findings from that study that will help us with what you're looking for.
Is that strictly summertime or is that year-round usage?
Year-round.
Oh, wonderful. That would be so helpful. And when is that targeted for next year?
December.
Starting in December of
The
this year?
visitor use study should be completed December of this year.
Oh, so it's already underway.
Oh, it's been
Oh,
underway
that's
for
great.
2 years.
Oh, that's great.
And following the completion of that study, Blake mentioned that we're hoping to implement that data into the environmental dashboard so it becomes evergreen and accessible to you and to everyone.
Great. Then my other quick question is related to UTA's recent announcement that based on their difficulty in acquiring new bus drivers, that they are going to curtail the Route 953, which is the only route that brings let's just say skiers from the north into Little Cottonwood Canyon. That is from Fort Union Boulevard or 6200 South Park and Ride. That's going to be done curtailed altogether. And then the headway on the other two bus routes running along Fort Union and 9400 South, going from 15-minute headway up to 30-minute headway. Can you give any comment on how CWC sees this, or possibilities for perhaps our municipality to look at this? We have grave concern. I have representing District 4, grave concerns that what we needed to become more enhanced has, boom, gone the other direction suddenly. Any comments or suggestions?
So, from what I've heard, yeah, it's a big blow. And it's not just for the Cottonwood Canyons, it's for the region. It's an air quality thing. It hurts, not just for here, like I said, for the region. But couple of things that I've heard recently is that UTA they've talked to the ski resorts. The ski resorts have voiced some concerns, and they're kind of collaborating a little bit more on maybe tweaking some of those routes. I don't know if 953, 954 is completely out yet, but don't quote me on that. I know that there was a desire to try and at least have some of frequency on that route. A couple of other things that we're working on for this year and the coming years is we'll have a conversation with a company called Via. Via is a company that provides transit services. They are responsible for delivering, Chris, our chair, knows all about them, for High Valley Transit. They have a contract right now with UTA to deliver microtransit services to the southwest corner of the county and west side Salt Lake City. What they can do, what microtransit does is it's like a Lyft, Uber type service that can pick you up from designated points in a neighborhood or your home, depending on demand, and do a shared ride to a certain location. So we've got something set up with them in the next couple of weeks. Not sure, that program, not sure what we could do there, but we're exploring our options to try and minimize that impact.
Thank you.
Awesome.
The visitor use study, I don't know if I misunderstood or if I got it right. It'll determine the different number of uses that are out there, about the number of users that are doing that, and kind of set a threshold for each of those individuals. And this is where we would start to see a judgment. If all of a sudden we doubled the number of hikers on this trail, that would be a detriment to this trail.
Yeah.
And you can kind of assimilate some of that to find out this is kind of the way
You're right on. We've got the whole proposal is on our website. It's a big, piece of our portfolio, but you pretty much hit the nail right on the head with what we'll see out of the visitor use study. Earlier this summer, we got a really good look at the impacts of visitation and trails and how it's particularly at the high alpine lakes, and some recommendations about cleaning the webbing up of the trails, particularly as visitation increases, harden these trails condition. So, and then that was one piece of the work. There will be an ecological piece as well to the visitor use study as well.
Thank you, Scott. Yeah, Doug.
One other thing, in the studies, will it show a clear locals versus visiting out of state in our canyons? I'm just curious if that is.
Yeah,
is that clear or not?
I'll have to go back and I'll circle back with Mayor Wickers and get a better sense of that. But understanding where people are coming from, that might be tricky because we're using a lot of cell phone data. So if somebody is staying at Sandy for a week for a ski vacation, it may show that they're originating from Sandy. So I'll have to double check on that to see what type of visitation. Part of it is we're doing the team that's out there are doing interviews out in the mountains.
field.
Yeah, out in the field. So we may be able to tease out some of that data from those one-on-one interviews versus cell phone data.
Well, I appreciate this because I know a lot of focus is on Little Cottonwood Canyon for, very reasonable reasons. And so I'm concerned about Big Cottonwood being impacted after what happens to Little Cottonwood.
Yeah, we thought it was part of the charter with Mountain Accord to look at all of this together.
It's interesting they grouped those three canyons together because you can come over Mill Creek to Big and from Big to Little.
And the time is right for Big Cottonwood Canyon. We're starting to see some things in the EIS where, if they're going to be tolling at the top of Little, they're going to be tolling the top of Big Cottonwood Canyon, and this idea of shifting buses over to Big. So I think the time is right for us to collectively come together with an action plan, identify funding, get it queued up and ready to go.
Great, very happy to see this. I know in American Fork, sometimes you can't hardly get up that canyon. And so I do really appreciate this. It impacts all of us, but especially those that have lived here, all of our lives. We used to ride our bicycles up to Spirit Lake. Silver Lake. And we, in the night, let's say 5 a.m, we wouldn't have a car pass us. And now it's different, sadly.
It sure is.
But
Well, thanks, Doug. So let me end with just a plug for what Lindsay talked a little bit about the environmental dashboard. So if you have not visited the environmental dashboard, go to cwc.utah.gov and you'll see there'll be a link to it. It is absolutely amazing. We have actually communicated with our school district that any child looking to do a report, teachers should be looking at this information to teach our students about our mountains. And this has just unbelievably incredible, great information. And so I can't give it a high enough plug. And I hope that everyone listening will go to it, that the council will spend some time in it, because it was a worthwhile effort. And I just can't tell you how impressed I was. So let me say this, Lindsay, Blake, you're awesome. Thank you for coming. Chair Robinson, you're the best. So thank you all for coming, and this has been really, really helpful. So
Thanks, Mayor, and
Thanks
kudos
a
to
lot,
you.
Mayor.
thanks, Chris.
Stepping in, we've had great partnerships with Mayor Peterson when I started, and you've jumped in, engaged, and I think you're doing a wonderful job for your city with the CWC. So thank you for your participation and engagement.
Thanks, Blake. Appreciate it.
Right on.
Thanks, Lindsay. Thanks, Chris.
Thanks to all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Okay, so we still have a couple of staff reports that we're going to get to quickly. So item 6A is a Big Cottonwood Canyon Trail project discussion from Public Works Director Matt Shipp. And we had scheduled 15 minutes, Matt. We're probably not going to give you 15. So
I'm gonna take 20 to get online though. It'll help. It dropped me twice. Or I'm not able to find it somewhere. Am I missing something?
Here,
any chance we want to move to Mike first?
Oh, I'm gonna beat him on time.
Okay.
I could have been done by now.
I am ready. I'm ready. Oh, I had it fine. Do your thing.
Okay, we're going to move to a Mid-Valley Active Transportation Plan.
But
Discussion. We're gonna have Mike Johnson, our Community and Economic Development Director. Go through this.
Screen full here. We talked about this with the council back in July. This is just an update. We're ready to move forward with the process of the Mid-Valley Active Transportation Plan. So I'm going to run through this quick. This is very similar to the presentation that was shown previously. Okay. The plan is a regional active transportation plan. This was funded through Wasatch Front Regional Council for 6 different cities, us, Midvale, Taylorsville, Murray, Holiday, and Mill Creek. It's one large plan, and then it has 6 breakout plans that each city, the intention is for each city to adopt. I think Murray just adopted theirs. I think a few of the other cities have as well, and the rest, it's still in consideration.
I've just got a few snippets of the plan here, but the goal of the plan is to prioritize safe routes for all users and envision of what they call a backbone network of active transportation that crosses city boundaries. Because when you're on your bike, you know, the city boundary, what city you're in shouldn't necessarily matter as long as you can get safely city to city on your bike and travel effectively that way. This started in 2019. The Planning Commission recommended approval back in January of this. It was introduced to the council, I think, in February and then again in July, and now we're just back again with the full plan. We've made some updates since the previous couple discussions that I'll show you in just a second. But in a very high level nutshell, it's proposing these different types of active transportation routes throughout each of these cities. From level 1 protection, which is a separated bike lane, physically separated from the roadway in some manner, to separation by striping, which is your level 2 protection. And then level 3 would be your lower traffic roads where bikes share the road. This is the Cottonwood Heights portion of this, and this plan matches up with all of the trails and bike lanes that are shown on any other master plan that we have adopted. So they're all complementary and cohesive. But it identifies 51 total transportation projects, including 16 of those that are actual multi-use paths, which would be that level 1 protection. That's all the orange on the map there. So the vision here is to have a really extensive network throughout the city and to adjacent cities of very safe separated bike lanes. And then on some of the other roads, we're envisioning buffered bike lanes and some more local kind of neighborhood byway concepts there as well. The backbone projects are those roads that connect into other cities. So Fort Union, 13th, 27th. 27th isn't quite a backbone, that's internal, but still a bigger road. Highland Drive, and then obviously Wasatch. And I want to go to this picture here. This is it's kind of hard to see with this kind of mess of lines here, but you can see Cottonwood Heights compared to some of these other cities. We have a pretty dense network of recommended bike lanes. So it's pretty extensive. I'd say our city is well represented in this plan, which is good. And you'll already notice, while some cities have adopted, we're still in the process of it. We've proposed recent grant funding for some of these backbone networks, which we talked about at the last meeting, which is that Union Park, kind of Fort Union cycle track improvement, Highland Drive to Bengal. Those have been contemplated and partly awarded already and are under application again. And then Fort Union as well, we've seen some movement there. So having this plan in place will only help us continue to seek funding and try to prioritize implementing this.
You can describe multi-use. The orange one, that's one.
Level 1. It's level 1. It's not necessarily strictly defined as one of these over the other, but it's something. It's a bike lane or a pathway that is
on the road.
It's physically it may be on the roadway, but you can see those first two. One is a raised shoulder, so it's physically separated, or there's medians or planter barriers or something like that. There's a barrier between traffic and active transportation.
So right now, we do not have any of the cycle track at grade protected with parking. We're a mix of a little bit of buffered bike lane, a little bit of the bike lane in level 2, and then the shoulder, which as cyclists going on any one ride, you could experience all 3, actually all 5 of the ones on the left. Sure. At any given moment. And so
we have the Big Cottonwood Trail, which is a multi-use path, obviously, and then the 2 residential projects on Fort Union actually have that raised and separated cycle track implemented in front of them, and that's the one we have additional funding we're working on right now to complete the span of Fort Union in between those 2 projects to connect that whole thing.
where do we have raised and curved?
So 1700 East and Fort Union, that new multifamily project right across from Mountain View Park has that.
So that's like 100 yards.
Correct, and then at Brook Hill Drive, the other new development down there has that as well, which is just past the fire station to the east. And then, like I said, we have funding to pursue that and construct it between those 2 projects. It's a start, admittedly, but we are seeing that gain a little bit.
Yeah, the Big Cottonwood Canyon Trail is a really good example that goes quite a ways.
And then obviously the orange, that would be an orange line here. We're proposing orange lines in many different places in the city. So this is something that's maybe a more recent priority, but definitely a point of emphasis.
Great.
The plan is to present this for public hearing at the next council meeting or public comment. And then it'll just be ready for the council to take action on after that point. So, as soon as November. A full plan has been available on the city website, so it's there. If there are any questions, you can let me know.
Okay. So the plan is a public hearing for our next council meeting.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So
Thank you, Mike.
whatever we choose to submit goes into the larger plan, or this is what we've said.
They've adopted, they have the whole kind of larger plan online, and then it's the formal adoption is just each of the 6 cities adopting it.
Okay.
And it has city specific references.
So my understanding of the Mid-Valley, the regional plan, the only thing that interfaces with Cottonwood Heights at all is on the very northwestern edge of our city. Am I mistaken on that? I just want clarification that right now, the Mid-Valley Transportation Plan, not Cottonwood Heights, not the one you're showing here, which the one
This is from the plan.
okay, but what I'm understanding when I look at the Mid-Valley Plan is if this is Cottonwood Heights, the only connectivity that we have to any of these other cities is either if you're on the Big Cottonwood Canyon Trail and you end up in Holiday, then you come up onto 6200 South or onto Murray Holiday Road, or on the very western edge of our city. But in terms of safe, active bike routes on any of our collectors, our arterials, at this time they don't exist. This is all
future.
So I just want to make sure I understand. So you're going to be asking for public input on the entirety of the Mid-Valley, or also on what Cottonwood Heights is looking for within our city boundaries?
Well, both. And then like I showed, we do have the city version here broken out. So this is what this plan proposes within our boundaries, and then it connects to the greater network as well.
So as a cyclist myself, what I am not seeing is a prioritization of how we connect, for instance, neighborhood bypass routes.
Yeah.
So that people can safely ride throughout our city. Right now, it's, I hate to call it a hodgepodge, but that's what it is in my opinion. And so can the plan be improved to show some kind of prioritization or approximate timeline? It seems kind of like a shotgun, like here's 30 things we hope to do, but it doesn't have a prioritization or timeline. And
Yeah, I think with a regional plan like this, the prioritization of it would come down to each local municipality.
no, I'm talking about for our city. Because right now, for the regional bigger picture, we're starting to dig in a little bit there, but for our city is what I'm talking about.
He's saying that we can prioritize however we want.
I think the plan will lay out
Within the plan.
this network.
So we can, yeah.
I think the priority of the plan, honestly, is regional, right? So it's these backbone routes, it's all this thing, but then we will have an adopted plan that has all these routes at the city level, and this council can prioritize that and implement that any way it wants.
But that's not what we're focused on in the next couple weeks.
The Mid-Valley plan on its own, these are the 4
This is
goals of the
adopted
plan.
in
Is prioritize safe routes for all, which is a broad plan, but really to complete those backbone networks. The whole reason why this plan was kind of a innovative and a neat concept is it took this like micro regional approach where it connected these, it's not every city in Salt Lake County, but it's the 6 that kind of interface. So I would probably say, just by design, the plan prioritizes those backbone routes, those major routes that connect cities.
But our safe areas for cycling don't connect to the western edge of Fort Union Boulevard.
Yeah, and I think if you took that at a local level, you'd want to make sure that your local active transportation routes connect into these backbone routes. Everything connects safely. You can get through your neighborhood to a major bike lane that then connects you into other cities, because then you can effectively.
But that's what saying here. Middale's saying this is where we're going to have paths of active transportation or whatever type connecting going east out of our city. And if we know that, then we can say, okay, well, that's a good place for us to put them connecting to you. And Holiday, same kind of a thing, that this is where we're gonna have paths that can go out, and we're saying, okay, we agree with that, we can focus ours rather than just doing our own thing to have, you know, the Wasatch Boulevard, honestly, the Newton's Corner one needs to be put on there a little bit better, because that already,
That's the
It's
only
it.
safe way to get
It's,
to the,
well, yeah,
to
it's,
get west out of the
it
city.
shows on our side.
Is
but it
on
doesn't show their side.
Knutson, because there's no safe way to get along Fort Union Boulevard, and the neighborhood bypass routes don't connect. Either on the south side of Fort Union or on the north side, so that's where there's the elephant in the room, so to speak, is that again, Midvale indicates it's Fort Union, but none of the plans that we have in place are in any meaningful timeline going to get us to a Fort Union Boulevard. Do you see what I'm saying? For, along Fort Union Boulevard. I mean, unless we do a major.
Well, I see very recent progress on this. It's not there today. Just, the bike network.
The
is not there
timeline
today,
is
but
just,
we've
but
got 2 projects. that
Yeah,
are
funding.
funding for
Money.
another.
Funding's gonna be.
so we're gonna talk about a solution to not being so rushed, but unfortunately, we have to move on.
Yeah.
So let's, thank you, Mike, I appreciate it, and we're gonna go to Matt,
All right.
our Public Works Director, who will talk about the big Cottonwood Canyon Trail project.
Okay. Okay, so Mayor and Council, we received a couple of years back, actually, a track grant from the county to do some improvement on the Big Cottonwood Canyon Trail. That has, through COVID and through some funding things that happened, it got canceled for a while. Then it came back, and then we're finally getting around to this project. We received approximately $84,000 to do repair and maintenance on the Big Cottonwood Canyon Trail and the location that we received it for is from approximately 215 behind the corporate center. And you can see right here, this is the fish shop. I don't know what they
Market
call
Street.
it. Yeah, Market Street. And then from there, it goes. I'm not gonna get into never mind. And from there, it takes it up to 30th East. That was the original plan, was in this location, as you can see. So everything west of 30th East was in the original reconstruction. When we went out to bid, we wanted to take a look at the rest of the trail and what we could try to improve as we went along, and we put it out for bid in different phases. One of the other phase on the east side of 30th East, you can see that it goes behind the center here, the commercial center. And then right down in this location is the pond, to give you an idea of where we are. Goes behind the shop, UDOT shop, and it ends up right there at the pond. We received a bid for this project. We have 84,000 in the grant. The bid for doing what you see on the screen right here, all of this is approximately $110,000. So what we're doing, coming back to you, we'll come back to you next council meeting for a budget adjustment and some discussion on approving a contract. But we're asking that the council approve the remaining funds to finish this out. In other words, it's about $25,000. I will tell you, though, I'm going to come back and ask for about a $35,000 increase for any problems that we may run into while we're doing this trail as we go along. Doesn't mean the contract will be for that much, but there will be a budget adjustment, and then we can do that work. So this will repair the damage, the tree root damage through here, put a new surface, repair all the damages through here, put a new surface on this, and include striping as well on the project.
What's
So
the difference between these areas versus the green areas?
the green areas are not in the worst shape, so we're just making some small repairs and doing a seal coat on the whole thing.
So the only place that you're repairing
It's through this area.
is where it's outlined with black lines.
Yes, correct.
And
Through here,
So-
and then through here.
why was it that all the areas that needed repair, they go from here all through there's about another, whatever it is, 3/4 of a mile at least, where there's a lot of root damage and why was this area not included? Only, this represents maybe 2/3 of the trail. Why was
Funding.
the other?
Funding. We had an $84,000 grant to fix everything on the east. We took it and we asked for another phase to come this far and see what the bid would come in to be. That's all it is, comes down to funding. If the council wishes to fund more of this, we are certainly happy to do it, but we put it out.
This was also
this way.
part of the trail built, I believe.
Yes,
How soon can will this get started?
this won't get started until the spring, coming up. We had two bids, another bid did come in and it's about $75,000 more than the low bid. They can start now, but we're paying the 75,000 on top of it plus. So it's a little expensive.
And that's the second one you have listed here.
I don't, on the,
Yeah, so there were.
Okay.
there were two
was
bids.
one
This
for-
is the low
for
bid on here.
109 and one for 177.
So the 109, how far does it go? It goes the
it's
same.
from
distance?
this, what you see on the screen here.
And is there a way to grind down and get those roots deeper because they're chronically coming up? You know what I mean?
It'll be tearing, they won't be there when we're done.
How old is this portion here?
I don't
Was-
have an answer. I'm somebody who's here
Take a
before
stab at
me.
it. It is one of the
It's
first.
one of the first ones built, so I'm not
So
quite.
7 years old?
2007, 2005, 2007.
I'd
Somewhere
say
in there.
2007, 2006.
So this.
15 years.
And then the section, I mean, wasn't it Mayor Peterson who had the big hoopla at the mouth of Big Cottonwood Canyon parking lot? Related to it being finished out to the mouth of Big.
There was a gap that we did about
What
3-4
was that?
years ago.
Well, there was, we did the final piece with Mayor Peterson, but prior to that, the opening and stuff, we had, that was.
So part of the reason we're not focusing on this last third of the trail is because it's relative, it's like maybe 6 years old versus 15 years old or 12 years old.
Yes, but also it's funding. I mean, we had the $83,000 grant. And
Yeah, I
it's
think
taken as far as
$35,000 is kind of a no-brainer. I guess the question is do we want you to go through and estimate what doing the rest of it would cost?
If you would like more to do the rest of the trail, there's some sections, like I said, it would be a lot of seal coating on this one versus anything else.
Would it cost a lot?
It would be
Figure
worth
that
it
out.
to get an estimate for the entire.
Yeah, if
trail.
we could, because I counted, there were only about 6 areas beyond what you have here that need attention. And some of it is just 10 by 10 feet long. I mean, it's.
Happy to take a look at it, bring that back next council.
Yeah, we can look at it, but one of the things that we'd like to do is next
Get it done.
2 weeks. Enter into a contract and move forward, at least with what's bid. We probably have to bid the remaining portion of it. Separately, because this bid came in
Keep it
for
up, maybe
this.
they'll do that every.
Yeah, I'd like to see if they'd be
We
willing to
don't
do
have
an
we
addendum
don't have
for
a
another.
contract yet, so we can work with it. But
Yeah.
if it gets,
Yeah, I'd like-
defer to
I'd say
Shane
go
on
ahead
some of
and
this,
just
but
see what we're-
if the contract grows over a certain percentage, then we may need to bid it out again. You can't change it like that. But certainly we'll come back to you with that. But with the expectations, we probably need to lock this contract up as soon as we can.
Thank you, Matt.
It's a great trail.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. So that brings to me, before I get to the review of calendars and upcoming events. It's stressful on my end to get us through this work session. And I think we have enough going on. I feel like maybe moving our business meeting back to 7 and giving us 3 hours. There might be a meeting or two where we have more time to sit in here than usual by ourselves. But my suggestion would be to move the business meeting back to 7 to give us a little bit more time without feeling rushed
As of next meeting.
every other meeting. That's a good question. We would want to get it on social media and get it out to the
Yeah, it
public
would
as
need
soon
to
as
be published. We
possible.
can't do it today.
No, I know.
Well, I would motion that, enter a motion to, start, the business meeting at 7 PM, starting in November.
We can.
Yeah, we should have action in.
Yeah, it's not a motion, but so
Okay.
it's a consensus. So that might not be a bad idea. We'll go one more meeting at 6:30 and then unless anybody wants to talk to me about it, we'll go at 7 o'clock beginning in November. So that sounds great. And like I said, we're not there yet. That's just my suggestion. We'll get a consensus before then. So, the review,
Yeah, no, I'm fine with making that change now, so.
review of calendars, thanks Scott, calendars and upcoming events. Monster Mash will be held on October 28th from 5 to 7 at City Cottonwood Heights Community Recreation Center. Trunk or Treat will be here at City Hall on October 31st, starting at 3. Light the Heights will be held on November 28th from 6 to 9 at City Hall. Future city council meetings, October 18th, November 1st and 15th, December 6th and 20th, starting at 4 with our work session. To be D with our business meeting, future planning commission meetings, October 5th, 19th, and November 2nd, starting at 5 unless otherwise noted. We do not have anything to discuss in a closed meeting, so at this point I'll entertain a motion to close our work session and then into a business meeting scheduled to begin at 6:30.
I motion to close the work session.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Adjourned. Got 14 minutes to eat.
Normal.
14.
Hey, Doug, when you come back, I got a question on that striking and talk about when you come back.
Oh, yeah, in front of the front.
Yeah, I wanted to